Not sure if you need a handyman or a licensed contractor? Here's how you can tell. If you own a home or investment property, you've probably encountered situations where you need certain work done or you're prioritizing certain projects to improve your property and you can't decide between using a handyman or a licensed contractor. So how do you decide? In this video, I'm going to give you the pros and cons of each category. So let's start with handyman. My general advice would be to use a handyman for small projects and simple repairs. That would include things like repainting a room, fixing a hole in your drywall, maybe doing some minor exterior patching or securing a loose handrail. Small things that A, generally don't require extensive specialized knowledge, and B, won't lead your house to fall down or be filled with water if something goes wrong. So think of a handyman equals small projects. Now, on the flip side, you should use a licensed contractor for more complex tasks. And those could include things like major plumbing jobs, electrical repair, roofing, HVAC, and things that involve any kind of structural elements or serious masonry jobs. For that, I would definitely use a licensed contractor. Now, speaking of licensed contractors, there is a difference between a general licensed contractor and a specialist, also known as a subcontractor. So for example, if you want to build an addition or expand your house or build a primary suite or do a full gut remodel, you're likely going to get quotes from multiple general contractors. These are licensed and insured contractors. However, they will sub out the specialized work to their preferred electrician, to their preferred plumber, to their go-to HVAC guy, to their go-to roofers. So they're the generalist. They're going to oversee and manage the project, but they're probably going to do very little work themselves. They might have a crew of a couple of guys who maybe do the drywall piece of the project for them, or maybe they have a painter, but generally they don't like to keep their payrolls very high, so they will sub out as much of the work as possible. So if you are facing a massive project like the stuff I just mentioned, additions, full remodels, probably best to get quotes from, and this is key, multiple general contractors. You'd be surprised at the price range you might get. If your project is more limited in scope, I would skip the general contractor and do your research and find a specialist for the specific project. For example, summer, obviously pretty hot in our region and humid sometimes. Let's say your air conditioning system is not working properly, or maybe you don't have an air conditioning system and you're tired of using window AC units. So if you own a home or condo and you want to put in a ductless system, also known as a mini split system, or a central air system, you don't need to go to a general contractor. Just go straight to an HVAC company, right? Because the general contractor is going to charge a premium just for his cut, right? Because they're going to sub it out to an HVAC company anyway. So just do your research, find 2, 3 HVAC companies and get different quotes and compare them, and obviously check their reputations, do your research, read their reviews, and then pick one that you feel is best suited for your project. If you need to install an electric vehicle charger or increase your electrical capacity because you're adding more appliances, hire an electrical contractor, a licensed electrician for that project. If your electrical panel in the basement is very old and you need to replace it, don't use a handyman, use a licensed electrician, right? If your roof is past its useful life and you're seeing a small leak, use a licensed professional roofing company. Don't use a handyman for something as important as the roof over your head, right? Because think about it this way. Why do people generally choose a handyman over a licensed contractor? It's usually about the money, right? Handymen are, by definition, cheaper. Why? There are 2 important reasons. Number 1, they are generally not licensed and they're not specialists in a particular field, which means they may or may not know the code as it relates to the electrical field, plumbing, HVAC, right? And the reason why that's important is it's fine for a small drywall repair job or a minor plumbing job or painting or touch-ups or replacing doors or trim or even replacing flooring, because these things are not that impactful if it's not done right. Like, it could be fixed. But the reason why specialists need to get licenses and get special training is because the work is very specific, right? And it's very involved, and there's also health and safety implications, right? Electricians have to study and get an electrical license. Plumbers do as well, and HVAC professionals do, because it's important to do it right, and there's certain US standards, right? There's codes to follow. So you want to know that you're hiring a professional, because not only do you probably have to get a permit from the town if the work is extensive enough, but you need to pass the town inspections. And the inspector is going to look, is this up to code? And if the answer is no, your contractor is going to have to come back and fix it so that you can pass inspection and close out that permit. Which is, by the way, very important if you're going to sell your property in the near future, right? Because that's probably going to come up. So, just to summarize, it's okay to use a handyman if it's a small job or a minor repair that will not be earth-shattering if it's not done right, right? If they mess up the floors and there's some cosmetic imperfections, either you live with it or you have someone else come and fix it, right? If they don't do a great job fixing a hole in the sheetrock and they don't sand it down well and it looks messed up after they paint it, you can always have that redone. But frankly, if I'm replacing an electrical panel, I'm not trusting a handyman. I'm gonna have a licensed electrical professional do it, because frankly, especially if I'm living in the house or I'm a landlord and I have tenants, I wanna make sure that it's done properly, because safety is on the line, right? I wanna avoid the risk of an electrical fire. I actually wanna give you a couple of important case studies. So I'm not gonna mention names, but there are two people in my inner life circle who both had experiences with using handymen, not licensed electrical contractors, to install their Tesla chargers. The first one, luckily disaster was avoided, but he came down to the basement and smelled something that seemed off and opened his electrical panel, and he can actually smell that there was something burning there recently. He had someone come in, a professional electrician, and he said, "You're lucky this was not a full-on electrical fire," and he has 2 little kids in the house. And he's lucky that this did not burn down his house, because it was not wired properly, and he saved some money, a few $100s, by paying a handyman who said, "Oh yeah, I can do it for you, no problem." Another person, a significant portion of their home burned down, also because it was not a licensed electrical professional that wired their Tesla charger. And again, it resulted in an electrical fire, and in this case, it was very, very severe and very significant. Again, luckily, no one got hurt. Now, third example, there was an old property in Bayonne, New Jersey, and there was a lot of DIY work done on it by the previous owners. And apparently, unbeknownst to the current owner, the electrical panel, there was a breaker that was not wired properly, and it short-circuited, but it only short-circuited after the wire was overloaded, and it almost led to an electrical fire. In fact, there were sparks flying. The tenant who came downstairs to shut off the breaker after his living room lights went out noticed there were sparks flying, and he could smell smoke. And when a licensed electrician came to look at it, he realized that the wire coming in did not match the gauge on the circuit breaker. So he said that the owner was lucky this was not a full-on electrical fire. And there were multiple units in this property with tenants in each one and with kids in some of these apartments, so this could have been a disaster. So these are not to scare you, the viewer, but these are just some case studies, actual case studies, and in some cases, disaster was averted, where things could have gone really, really wrong and people could have gotten seriously injured or worse because someone did not use a licensed electrician for important tasks. So that's just three examples. I'm sure you all have friends, colleagues, and relatives who can think of their own examples. So to summarize, it's okay to pay a premium for a licensed contractor because you're paying for their specialized skill, knowledge, license, and also the fact that they should be fully insured. So you're buying peace of mind and you're buying expertise. And generally, they're usually much more experienced than a handyman, especially in their field. Now, on the flip side, I'll give you an example in my own life when using a handyman makes more sense than using a licensed contractor. I needed two things done in my kitchen. We wanted to replace our old faucet with a touchless faucet, and we wanted to get rid of the old InSinkerator, which is a brand of garbage incinerator some people install next to their sink. So I had a licensed plumbing company send two guys in a truck, and they gave me a quote. Just for those two things, it's under the same sink. It was $600. And it was gonna be like 2 hours of work. By the way, I already paid for the new Kohler faucet, so that did not include parts, just labor, right? Roughly $300 an hour. I was like, are you serious? Just for replacing the faucet and taking out the InSinkerator? Yeah, you know, it's gonna take us a couple hours, and then we have some minor parts to buy, like segments of PVC piping and stuff like that. I said, all right, let me get back to you. I call a trusted handyman who also has a general contractor license. He's not a licensed plumber, but he's one I've used for multiple tasks, and he's very good and very reliable. I said, when can you come by? He said he'll be there in 2 days. His price was less than half, and he did the work in roughly about 2.5, 3 hours. And it's been working great. So I saved a few $100s just by going with a trusted repairman / general contractor and not a licensed plumbing company, because let's face it, if I had paid the licensed plumbing company, the two guys in the truck that would actually be doing the work would be getting a fraction of the $600 I would be paying, because I'm paying for their office staff, I'm paying for the van, right? The gasoline, the tolls, I'm paying for all the other overhead they might have as a company with an office, right? And someone picking up the phone. So I'm sure they were equally qualified, or maybe even more qualified than the guy I used for the plumbing tasks, but he did a great job, and he's a sole proprietor, so I'm only paying him essentially, right? So in that situation, it did not make sense for me to pay more than double just because the truck had a licensed plumbing company name on it, right? So in situations like that, it may make more sense to just find a trusted handyman. Now, the question is, how do you find one? Luckily, in today's day and age, it's pretty easy. Obviously, there's Google Business Reviews, but there's also an app called Thumbtack, which is becoming more and more popular. So you could leverage today's tools, whether it's apps or review sites like Google Business, and really do your research, pick contractors in your area, reach out, get quotes, compare, make sure you read your reviews, and you don't have to rely on calling your uncle or your cousin and ask if they have a handyman or a plumber, right? Obviously, you can still do that, but the tools are at your disposal and it's very easy to do. So I would say, to summarize, first figure out the scope of work that you need someone to do. Figure out if it requires specialized skill and knowledge or if it's a relatively simple job, and then use Thumbtack and Google Business to figure out which contractors to reach out to. And generally, my advice is speak to more than one contractor, because you might be surprised at the difference in quotes for the same exact project. So I hope this video was helpful, and if you liked it, please follow and subscribe and share, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for watching.